Hello, 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 everyone in YouTube and land. I want to apologize. Yes, we're live on video now. I want to apologize for the fact that I can't make this smaller now. What happened?
What's the email about?
What is it about?
Yeah, no, I mean, I read the email, but
I don't remember.
It was a reference to another. Doesn't use Facebook, but has all the asterisks. What were the asterisks?
Oh, there was an email on a previous show that you haven't had a chance to listen to because you have jet lag.
Yes.
And in that email, he said, nobody uses Facebook. I don't use Facebook because of this, and this. And it turns out like, oh, but he has to do a lot of things to not use Facebook, and he also uses Facebook for work. But that's work, so it doesn't count.
Right, but nobody uses Facebook.
Yeah, but nobody uses Facebook. And so this guy's like, well, wait a minute. I don't use Facebook at all. No caveats, no workarounds. So. Yes. That's what that's about. Len, what are you drawing?
Ooh, don't you wish I knew? Or wish you knew?
All right, announcement for the folks here at Nerdtacular. The shirts have arrived. And Dave wanted me to tell you that after DTNS, so don't all leave. Because they also just got them and they're busy like sorting things out. But after DTNS, they will be available out at the merch table. Woo! And those are all the details I have. So spread the word.
It did.
Jory, wrong mic.
You
can do it.
I don't have time to go. I don't have time.
He's already funded. It
Yeah,
doesn't
whatever.
care
This is like any relationship. We're both just gonna start putting in less effort into that.
He's gonna shave his mustache like it's over.
Oh no, that's staying. In fact, if you run into my wife, Ashley, if you don't know her, she has green hair and she's probably mobile streaming. Just let her know that the mustache is great and it's never going away.
All right, are you guys ready?
Do it.
Let's do this.
Let's.
I'm going to do this. Hey, Tom, did you need me for the tech panel? That's about to start? No, he'll understand.
Wait, who's that?
Brushwood.
He's a leader.
No, we're good.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Period.
man.
Everybody text @Schwood on Twitter. No, we're good. It's @SHWOOD on Twitter. No comma, we're good.
Cool. All right, here we go. Daily Tech News Show is powered by you. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support. This is the Daily Tech News for Friday, June 30th, 2017, live from Nerdtacular 2017! I'm Tom Merritt, streaming from the lovely Snowbird Resort in Salt Lake City. Well, actually, it's Snowbird, Utah. We're outside of Salt Lake City.
Just outside.
Big thanks to Rich Stroffolino for hosting the show yesterday, filling in while I was traveling. Let's give Rich a big hand. You did a great job. Of course, we have a lot of folks here on the panel today to chat with us about the tech news, but Len Peralta, even though he couldn't make it down here, still on the hangout. Everybody say hey to Len.
Hey! It's great to be here at Snowbird and Nerdtacular on July 4th weekend.
Yeah, you are here. You are literally here with us.
Yeah.
I am.
Spirit, Len.
I feel one with you.
There's a little Len in all of us. Wow. What? Stop. No. No, we'll just stop that right now.
All right. Settle down.
Of course, also joining us right here and the panel from our far side, Mr. Steven Schleicher, host of Critical Hit Major Spoilers. You were showing me some cool VR stuff you were messing around with earlier.
Yeah, so you were talking last week, earlier this week, I'm so far behind on the Daily Tech News Show, but you were talking about how VR might be better served streaming if you only use half of that. And so I've got a Fly 360 camera that is supposed to be pointed upwards, but I decided to point it outwards, which would give you that 180-degree experience, 180-degree experience. I've been experimenting with some board game stuff. How would it work if you were sitting at the table with your fellow gamers and be able to look around and see what everyone else was doing? And then when it comes to data, you can have data pop up above people's heads. And it was actually surprisingly easy to put together and do. And you know, as great as your 360 stuff for Discovery was, 180 might be even better. And I think that people might be onto something.
Well, I think.
Ladies and gentlemen, Justin Robert Young, host of Thursdays on DTNS.
Smooth as silk. Yeah, I actually kind of agree with you. I mean, as awesome as, the best experience that you can have with the Discovery videos that I did with Brian for Discovery and Toyota. By the way, the all-new RAV4, fantastic.
Not a sponsor of Daily
Not a
Tech
sponsor.
News Show.
Not a sponsor. That's just a personal preference for me. But the best experience was on a Vive when you downloaded the full files, and that's 4 gigs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and a lot of people A, don't have a Vive, and B, just don't want to randomly download 4 gigs for each for 12 episodes. Right. So I think that reducing the footprint of VR is a huge part of making it mainstream.
And Patrick Beja joining us as well from FrenchSpin.com.
Woo!
And from Finland via France.
Yeah,
you're here in person.
Interesting trip. You can touch me.
Thank you for that consent.
Right. Okay. Let's move on.
All right.
So, you know, it's so weird to be doing the show with actual being together. It's kind of, we don't really know how to act.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Tom, you're here.
Yeah.
I can actually.
I can see that you don't hate me.
Well,
I always knew.
Jury's still out.
No, he hates you.
All right, let's get to some tech things you should know about. macOS High Sierra is available for the public to try out in beta. A new version of the OS comes with a new file system. That's not scary at all. Support for higher quality, more efficient 4K streaming, and Metal 2 for better graphics, performance, and virtual reality. There are also upgrades to the Photos app, along with a bunch of other things. But I'm not going to try this out on any of my production machines. Any of you guys going to try it out? No,
not really needed. I mean, it's really a minor.
It's a behind the scenes update.
Yeah, I think I'll probably try it on my laptop.
Yeah.
You know, once this Kickstarter's done. So, maybe I'll keep it there for now. So yeah, a macOS High Sierra, YOLO 420, please. The Washington Post reports that Twitter is considering a feature that would let users flag posts that contain misleading, false, or harmful information. Twitter's Emily Horn told the Post that there are, quote, no current plans to launch any type of product along those lines.
I like that this is not just a no comment, but in my mind, there are no current plans to launch any type of product along those lines.
Well, you can
just stop Washington Post.
Yeah.
You can imagine how that would be exactly as the article says, used for, misused, and that would be another nightmare for Twitter that they don't really need. Even though it's a real issue for them that the fake whatever used, the solution might be worse than the problem.
Yeah.
So one might say that it would kind of drag you into like a bad place, like maybe
like a
it
portal.
Would be a hashtag portal to hell, hashtag hell portal, like maybe one of those.
Something like that.
Yeah, one might say that if they were you. Thursday, Facebook announced on Thursday that back on May 22nd, so they're just releasing to the public, the Ocula autonomous aircraft completed its second successful test flight, and this time landed without incident. The first test flight, if you remember, ended with a structural failure during landing. So flight time was 1 hour, 46 minutes. It rose above 3,000 feet, doubled its ascension rate to 180 feet per minute, although it only cruises at 10 to 15 miles per hour. This thing is not meant to go fast. It's meant to be able to fly for a long time over a particular area. Facebook wants Ocula drones to fly for up to 90 days at a time and offer internet access to a 60-mile wide area. So another step down the road to drones flying around delivering wireless internet right to our ground.
I think this is fantastic. My parents live in an area that is still rural where they can't get either fiber or cable or any kind of good internet access. So this is something that's a big plus and a big step up, and hopefully we can spread that range around even larger in the future.
Well, and you got to figure that there's got to be a hardware technical solution that's better for those kind of areas of the country than satellite, which obviously has its problems when it comes to bandwidth. So this seems, obviously people have always casted a side eye at Facebook whenever they've professed to just bring the internet to everybody. But as long as this kind of research is going on, I think it is a net benefit to everybody.
I think the big question is going to be, is it going to be more cost effective than the upcoming cell networks like 5G and maybe going forward?
Especially if you're going to provide rural network or developing countries access, it's going to have to be affordable.
Yeah.
And flying huge drones and balloons and things like that doesn't necessarily sound like the most cost effective way to deliver internet, but we'll see.
It would seem like it would be useful in some really remote areas, but hopefully any country that has, can build up an infrastructure with mobile would be able to.
And the idea with Google and Facebook is they want to sell ads to you. So if they can deliver the internet even at that amount of cost, and you start using Facebook or Google, you'll give them money somehow.
That is the golden goose.
Yeah.
Is this better than the balloon idea where let's float up a bunch of balloons into the same area?
I don't know that it's better or worse. At this point, I think the jury is
trying a bunch of stuff.
Sorry, we haven't decided.
I'm right
yet.
here.
I know.
No, I think I would like to see them in operation. I mean, it's one thing to do a science project; it's another thing to actually operate a business.
And just like you bring up a good point, there will be a battle of Oculus drones shooting down balloons, squirrels toting lasers on the balloons, fighting back.
The other question I think is, do you want your internet delivered by Facebook?
Or Google.
Yeah, Google.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Do you want to be locked into that? That's a very good point.
I mean, look at who we buy internet from now. It's not like they're the cuddliest teddy bears.
It's all relative. You're right.
Sony will begin manufacturing vinyl record albums for the first time since 1989 at a factory in southwest Tokyo starting in March. Nikkei reports Sony will make Japanese songs of the past as well as popular contemporary albums. Sony is recruiting retired engineers to advise them in the process.
I want to do a quick Insta poll. First of all, are there any retired engineers who know how to run a vinyl plant? Sony's looking for you.
Yeah, update your LinkedIn.
Second of all, how many of you have bought a vinyl album in the last month? Look at that.
Wow.
That is, I'd say 10 to 15%
15?
of this audience. Yeah. I have not bought one myself, but I received one for my birthday. So,
I mean, it's all about with the digitization of everything. People want a physical item to represent their attachment to whatever they're buying. And if Sony is thinking, all right, we need to get in on this, it means that it's an actual market. We all kind of suspected it for the past few years, but now it's definitely confirmed.
Yeah, they outgrossed streaming in the UK. And then they were the only thing other than digital that was growing as far as music.
And they've been for a while. And the interesting thing is that they're going to be making old songs as well as new ones.
Yeah.
So people are going to.
That's so much of that market. I mean, what I think we are seeing emerging here is just the idea that retro tech is cool, and it's something that we haven't really thought of because there's been such a steep curve in terms of technology that we realize that there are things that were like analog or we had collections for that now just don't exist. And as nostalgia is always a pull on the heartstrings, why not these other elements, as well as the fact that vinyl obviously has its own rich sound. I know everybody who buys it's gonna hate me, but whatever.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna buy an object to go with your digital recordings, because the album that I got had a download with it. You took a sheet of paper out of the sleeve and went and downloaded the digital recordings. So it's the object that represents that. You're gonna want a nice big vinyl art. And,
sure, I mean,
no one's gonna go buy cassette tapes.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we say that now.
Guardians of the Galaxy, if it works for Peter Quill,
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, look, Baby Driver is out this week, and it features its protagonist using an iPad or an old click wheel iPod. So, retro tech, man, it's in.
Now, some of us are old enough to actually remember using vinyl records up here.
I think all of us.
Yeah,
are
I think all of us.
old.
But there's another demographic. There's another demographic that to them this is brand new, and I know a lot of those people that fit into that age group that they only want to buy vinyl. So this seems like a big win-win for Sony to jump on board with this.
Yeah, a lot of people my age who didn't remember vinyl. I know are huge vinyl collectors now, so that is absolutely true. Facebook has rolled out its Find Wi-Fi feature to its mobile apps. Tap on the More tab in Facebook and choose Find Wi-Fi. A map will show you nearby locations of public Wi-Fi and a little about the business that offer them. I wonder if that's an advertising opportunity. Businesses have to choose to share their information with Facebook, so it won't be a comprehensive list.
Yeah, you're not going to get every single public Wi-Fi available because Facebook has to go collect them. But Facebook is not charging them to join, as I understand it. Although Facebook probably gives them an opportunity to spend some money in other ways.
I mean, what if everybody, of course, had the same icon, but whoever pays was yellow instead of blue?
Do you want the hours that you're open to be correct?
Well, I'm trying to think of legitimate ways to sell.
No. You're right.
You go right for Lone Shark.
I was thinking they were they're probably just doing this as like, hey, we'd like to get you on this map, so people know how to discover you, and you can boost that post essentially by doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, Facebook and Google, they're advertising companies. Anything they do, and I don't think that this is a cynical way to look at it. It's just how they make their money. Will relate to advertising. Will relate to a way to
of course.
buy advertising and get it in front of the people that they feel are targeted the most.
So I'm from a town of about 30,000 people, and there's 2 cable companies that offer both internet and cable service. And they are kind of like what's going on here in that they are trying to get their free Wi-Fi into as many businesses as possible, so that when you go in, when you access the free Wi-Fi, it says this is brought to you by company A or this is brought to you by company B. And then the hope is that people are like, wow, I really like the Wi-Fi brought to us by company A. Maybe we should consider switching from company B over. So this is maybe not a new idea, but it's just growing into a larger, more national brand.
All right. Dubai police showed off autonomous miniature police cars set to go into operation. Tom Merritt is on the
I know, try to get that out of there. The operation by the end of the year.
Right, by the end of the year, thank you. The cars are the size of a toy car and will use biometrics to identify wanted criminals. Give you a minute to factor that in. A small quadcopter equipped with a camera can be launched from the small car as well. This is kind of Transformers a little bit.
Mini Transformers.
Singapore-based OTSAW. What's happening?
They're showing the video behind you.
Oh, right. Singapore-based OTSAW Digital will deploy the cars as part of the Smart Dubai initiative.
Really smart, Dubai.
I mean,
doing a bunch of things
from the
like
city
that,
that's going to do flying autonomous drones to deliver you from place to place with a single occupant comes small cars that will be scanning you to see if you're a criminal.
So Dubai's got a lot of money, folks. They're swimming in it.
And you know what? Maybe they're investing in these technologies, and some of them are not going to work out, and they're just not just going to be as dumb as we think they're going to be. But if they're not, I can't imagine that a bunch of other cities, countries, whatever, could find a use for those technologies, and they might be leading the charge there.
I mean, it's funny. It's a funny story because it's small little cars, right? It's a not funny
Yes.
story because it's scanning your face constantly in a surveillance state. And then it's also just like, but if you could find a balance between how funny it is and the scary surveillance, there's something really interesting there.
It's the most adorable version of RoboCop.
I mean, maybe that's what you need. It's like if we're going to create a surveillance state, let's make it cute.
Oh, look at you taking away my rights. Look at you.
But I mean, we already have lots of CCTV cameras in many cities.
This is just making them mobile.
It's just making it mobile. But I can absolutely imagine if some person from Dubai representatives goes to London that just had a terrorist attack and tells them, hey, we can have this thing that roams around and can identify people that are known criminals in the crowds.
Only known criminals. That's
absolutely.
it. Only.
Well, undesirables.
I mean,
undesirables, Justin.
The point is, some political appointees might think, well, this might be a good thing to push.
And these are going to look ridiculous, in my opinion, in 10, 20 years when everything is just a small flying camera.
Well, that's what I like about this car is that you might think, oh, what happens if someone decides to run down the street or down a dark alley? Pop that little helicopter off and changes and follows it. I think that's a great idea.
Germany's Bundestag passed the Network Enforcement Act Friday, requiring social media companies to remove quote, obviously illegal content from their services, including things like hate speech, defamation, incitements to violence, and the like, within 24 hours of notification. If they fail to comply, they could face fines starting at 5 million euros, and if they repeatedly fail to comply, those fines could go up to 50 million euros. Less obvious criminal content still must be taken down, but you get 7 days to do that. Law goes into effect in October, and some organizations are saying they might challenge it with the European Union, saying this is not consistent with EU law.
Wow. Okay. So enormous can of worms. Obviously, you have to remember that Germany has different laws when it comes to free speech and hate speech, as does a lot of Europe. There's so much to discuss here.
Well, just specifically to clarify that point, it just means that hate speech is not something that you can maybe face some sort of this is an illegal act.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To do it.
They have very strict laws.
Yeah.
It is actually criminal to engage in hate speech in most of the European countries. So just to take the sort of a different view, I think, than most of us are going to have on the panel, I'm the first person who used to say we shouldn't deliver the keys of regulation of these things, of speech, to those companies. We don't want Facebook and Twitter and Google and whatever to be deciding what is legal or not, or to be enforcing it even. I sort of changed my tune a little bit in the past few months or a couple of years, because we're, as fantastic as that idea is on an idealistic level, we're realizing, I think, that a lot of this doesn't really work. So I'm wondering if this might not be, and there's a lot to discuss here, but this might not be an okay-ish compromise. Basically, we would need to define who says this is illegal content, because here they're not really specifying it. But if we have an agreed upon way of deciding which one is illegal, then I don't think it's too far out to say, well, now you have to take it out.
Let's set aside, let's not have a debate about whether these should be the laws, right? Different countries have different laws. Let's just say, okay, there's a criminal thing that's happening on Facebook. Is Facebook responsible for it? Now, when I first saw this, some of the stories did not include the thing about notification. And I said, well, wait a minute. From the minute something's posted, you have 24 hours to go find it. That's going to be very bad, because it's going to cause networks to either remove themselves from Germany or to remove lots of posts and put in filters and shut down conversation.
Yeah.
Making
just in
this,
case maybe it's illegal.
Yeah, making this so that you don't have to go find it, but as soon as you know it's there, you have 24 hours, changes the conversation. Now, there's still plenty of organizations saying that still has the effect of making these networks lean to the side of eliminating speech just to be safe, in case somebody decides it was obviously criminal and they didn't, and that has a chilling effect on speech.
So I guess my question here is, and Tom, you hit on it, what is the limit for a company like Facebook or Twitter before they say, well, Facebook Germany, so long, friends, auf Wiedersehen, is that it?
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden that just redirects to Facebook France, where you have all the same accounts.
Or they just block German IP addresses.
Or they do something.
And to be clear, Facebook's not taking that tone. Right now, Facebook's saying we're working with the German government to figure out how to make sure that we keep criminal content off of our networks.
And already it seems like some of these are getting, some of this law is already sort of getting watered down in response to some of Facebook's pushback. But I do wonder, like, what is that line for them? How many times do they have to get popped for 50 million euros before they're like, well, you want to know what? You've made the cost of doing business here too much.
Oh, as long as I think they're making more than, a few times 50 million euros in Germany, but I mean, we don't really know. But what concerns me, which might lead them to go, all right, goodbye, this is too dumb, is some of the things like, you have 24 hours to remove the thing that is obviously criminal. Okay, I think most of us could understand how that would work. But then you have 7 days to remove things that are less obviously criminal. It's like,
that are kind of, sort of, maybe criminal.
Well, basically what go
I
ahead.
would say, so bring up the question is, when do you change the hate speech into something that's not as obvious? And how much harder does that make it for Facebook to go and search this stuff out? And do they incur fines because the way that they're delivering these messages has changed?
Well, and that's a good point, because that could keep the message up for longer, because Facebook has 7 days in those cases. But what the theory behind this law is when you, Facebook, see criminal content, you'll remove it. Now, you guys are taking too long to do it, so we're putting a law that says, look, when everybody agrees, oh yeah, there's no debate, that's criminal, you only should take 24 hours. You shouldn't take longer than 24 hours. You should have enough staff to be able to remove this stuff. When it's something that's criminal content, but it obviously took a while to determine it, you maybe had to run it by a couple of lawyers and stuff, then we'll give you 7 days. All of that obviously or non-obvious is determined after the fact, though, in court, if they are found in violation. So they have to guess, like, okay, is a court going to say this is obvious? I guess we just yank it down. And they're going to be yanking down more things than they would if they were given a little more time. And that's the argument Facebook's making is, look, we want to follow the spirit of this law. We don't want criminal content, but you're not giving us enough time to be accurate.
So some of the things they've been doing in the past few months is working with third parties to try and determine what is, on a wider scale, objectionable content. And maybe, if we're looking at this with slightly rose-colored glasses, maybe this will encourage them to perfect those processes and come to kind of a consensus where, of course, there are always going to be content, there's always going to be content where you're not sure, but if you work with, say, 3-4 different outside organizations and you're like, we're going to run it by them in a really streamlined process, and they will say, yes, this video of a, I don't know, beheading or something is obviously criminal. When they have vetted that criminal aspect, we will remove it within 24 hours, maybe for those extreme cases, because I think that's the way normal people are looking at this. They're like, well, look at that example. This one is obviously criminal.
Yeah.
It should be easy to determine somehow. And yes, it's fuzzy. You're not quite sure how that somehow works. But common sense dictates that, yes, you look at this, anyone reasonable would agree that this, in Germany, would agree that this is criminal. So if it encourages them to perfect this process for those extreme cases, I think it might be positive in the end. I'm not 100% certain.
It all depends on how it plays out. I still think 24 hours, I get why they want to put the pressure on. I still think it's a lot to put on someone, any network, and it doesn't directly threaten safe harbor. Safe harbor is the principle that, I'm not responsible for the content my users put on.
Yeah.
It doesn't do that because it requires a notice, but it might have the same effect as doing that, because content will get removed because of the speed at which it goes that might not be removed or need to be removed.
And ultimately, the problem for Facebook is, okay, that seems good, but how fast do these notices come? How often do they come?
Yeah.
And
how do you even get them? Like, that's not, is it like
send a raven?
Yeah, exactly. Like, is there some authority that tells you this is illegal? If like some government organization.
Well,
is telling
I
you
think
it is,
user
and,
reporting.
Yeah, but
plays
we know
into
how
this.
that can be gamed, and
Well,
but then you have to look at it.
But what do you dial, like,
And that's
511?
that right there is why Facebook is saying you're not giving us enough time, because we
Right.
get so many reports, many of which are not criminal at all, plenty of which are not obviously criminal. It's hard to sort through all this.
So that's why this less obviously criminal content must be taken down within 7 days really bothers me. Because if you limit the law to obviously criminal content needs to be removed, you can sort of get a process to determine, again.
You still have to
good faith
review
people.
everything, though.
Yeah, sure.
And that takes time.
I agree, but it's less of a kind of worms, hashtag hell portal, than we might think it might be maybe criminal, and you have 7 days, and like that's too I don't know. It's not clear cut enough.
And I think, and often, I'm sure, Patrick, you have a really interesting perspective on this, speaking multiple languages, but like, a lot of times these stories, you wind up finding out that the stories on day 3, 4, and 5 are a lot more illuminating than the one on day one where somebody is rewriting a story that was printed in a foreign language that doesn't exactly capture the nuances of everything. So I'm with you. I feel like there has to be, if you're going to make it a law and you're going to like levy these kinds of fines that you have to appeal through a court or something like that, you need to be as specific as possible.
Exactly.
Like that is just, that's only fair.
It seems like now is a good time for people who want to become lawyers to become criminal policy lawyers.
Yeah.
Because
Hit
they're
up
gonna be the
Berlin,
ones that-
baby!
They're going to be the ones looking at this stuff at 2 in the morning trying to decide whether this has to be taken down or not.
And just to wrap this up, don't forget, in Germany, the criminal content involves things like hate speech. You could easily see this law in the United States where the criminal content is just child pornography or incitement to violence, terrorism, etc. And so try to think about it not just around like, well, that's a law that we would never have in my country. Think about it like, okay, what are the things that are actually criminal to post where I'm from, and how fast and how much do I hold responsible Facebook, YouTube, etc. for removing that?
And I think the other thing is when you look at like posting an article or a video, you can imagine how they would review it. But does this include comments? Because a lot of the issues that we have in Europe is like
posted,
hate speech in a comment on something because people, pile on with anti-Semitic content,
No, it absolutely does
like,
include
does
comments.
that count?
Yeah, it
and
does.
then do you have to actually go in and review all of those as well? And
All right, well,
Hashtag
that
helpful.
is a look at our tech stories. Real quickly before we wrap up today, message of the day comes to us in regards to your statement on Tuesday that nobody uses Facebook, which, by the way, I mean, we all know that Patrick wasn't literally saying no one can't use Facebook.
Show me one. Show me one.
So we had
there you go. He
we had
wrote
one
it.
guy yesterday who wrote, or 2 days ago, wrote in and was like, well, I don't use Facebook, but he also had a lot of caveats and ended up that he actually had to use Facebook for work. We got another email that says, look, I had to write in after listening to you read the email with the guy who doesn't use Facebook, but had all the asterisks. I am probably a better example. I use no Facebook product at all that I am aware of. So he's no WhatsApp, no Instagram, etc. That said, I'm not a technophobe. I'm actually an IT infrastructure architect, an active geek in my personal life with a home AD domain, a 20 terabyte Plex server, pfSense router, etc. I just do not like Facebook and social media in general. I use LinkedIn strictly for work networking and as a kind of living resume. I do Reddit for entertainment, Hangouts and SMS, occasionally Skype, to talk to friends and family. No Facebook Messenger, Instagram, etc. My main point is not the struggle some may think it is, and as that guy's email really just seemed to prove, I know I am in the minority and have no problem with that. I just think it's important people know it's not essential. Thanks for the great shows. Been a proud patron since about day. Have fun at your event.
So yeah, obviously, I don't think anyone says that everyone in the world uses Facebook. I think there are some people who don't. I might be splitting hairs a little bit here, but doesn't Facebook build profiles on people who aren't logged in via the like button?
Oh, you're adding a coda to your earlier statement there.
Yeah,
no,
of
that's
course.
true. That's true.
I mean, in a sense, well, he doesn't use Facebook. Okay, yeah, some people don't, but 2 billion, that's a lot of people.
And maybe a better way to phrase it to address him is many people find it hard not to use Facebook. Not that they couldn't. They just find that there's social pressures or etc.
And I think also at this point, it was a different conversation even 5 years ago, but at this point, of course you can not use Facebook, but there's also outside pressure, as he sort of alluded to use it if you want to stay informed about, I don't use Facebook all that much, but many people want to stay in touch with their friends and families. And the point is, today, the social network for that is Facebook. There's no more, Orkut or Google Plus or whatever. I mean,
there is a
some
Google
people
Plus,
yes,
and
but
the
people
folks who
don't really
respond to
use
me
it.
on it will be very angry with you.
Yeah.
Both of them.
My point is, I suspect they don't use Google Plus for that purpose, right? Facebook is to stay in touch with their friends and family, see the pictures of their cute children, babies, and cats and dogs.
Ugly ones too.
Not as well. Yeah, we don't discriminate, but yeah.
All right, well, that is it for this episode of Daily Tech News Show. Steven Schleicher, thank you for joining us,
thank
my
you.
friend. Where do we find more of you?
Majorspoilers.com.
Excellent. Go check it out. Justin Robert Young, congratulations on the first round funding of the Kickstarter Action News.
train keeps rolling. So if you have not checked it out, go ahead and do it right now. ActionNewsGame.com. We are now funded, so it's definitely going to happen. Don't worry about that. But we got more cards that we can put in the game and a few surprises along the road for stretch goals. So go ahead and check it out. ActionNewsGame.com.
And you can find more Patrick Beja at FrenchSpin.com.
And follow me on Twitter, not Patrick, and not Patrick on Facebook, which, you know, is a fine platform.
Unless you're that guy who we know. Yeah.
Right. LinkedIn?
He didn't like social networks anyway. So
Just listen to the podcast.
Kind of makes sense. All right, let's check in with Len Peralta. What have you been drawing, Len?
Well, you know, you guys had a great discussion. But since this is a live Nerdtacular event, I wanted to do something for the Nerdtacular people. And this is a first. Someone actually ordered this before the show ended.
Wow.
So
somebody was keeping track.
Someone is keeping track of me, which is a little bit scary. I think it's through Facebook. Yes, you can actually purchase this non-official Nerdtacular print for Nerdtacular 2017 right now at lenperaltstore.com.
Of course, you got two people dancing, one wearing the Obey Henry shirt, the big word that is famous for Scott Johnson fans. If you don't know Scott Johnson, don't worry, it's FERT, F-E-R-T.
And there's a little snowbird at the bottom.
Kids ask, or parents ask your friends. Yeah, and a snowbird, that looks great. So lenperaltastore.com, folks, go check it out. Thanks again to everybody who came out to Nerdtacular 2017 and joined us here. What an amazing crowd. Stick around if you are in the building, or if you are on the live stream, or if you're listening to the patron version. We are going to do our quarterly analyst hangout, which means I update you on how DTNS is going. We take questions from our analysts in our Slack, and you folks here in the room will get a chance to ask questions as well. Don't forget to support us on Patreon, patreon.com/DTNS. Big thanks to all the patrons who are here in the audience. Give yourself a round of applause as well. Thank you for making this show possible. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 2030 UTC at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. We're at facebook.com/dailytechnewsshow. And our website is dailytechnewsshow.com. Back on Monday with producer Roger Chang as our guest. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Thanks, everybody. That was great. And Len, as usual, the art is amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. I wanted to do something special. This is a very special event, so of course, why am I going to do something for
Well, speaking
Nerdtacular?
of something special,
Yeah.
Len, you recently did a commission for some folks here in the audience, right?
I did. I was approached by someone named Anthony who said he was going to be at Nerdtacular, and he asked me to do something special for his friend Kent for his 40th birthday. And I think we have what I did for him there.
That's right. Kent, you want to introduce it?
Yeah, go ahead and talk it up.
So for my 40th birthday, Kent went out and reached out and, to a bunch of Diamond Clubbers and a bunch of Frog Pants people and got some videos made for me for our podcast on my birthday. So I had to show him up one. And we got an original Len Peralta artwork done, got it signed by a bunch of people here. And Kent, come on up, this is you for your birthday.
By the way, if you are not aware of these two gentlemen, they do a fantastic podcast called Ritual Misery. It is a great listen.
Happy birthday, man!
Happy birthday!
You guys should sing happy birthday.
You guys should
go. 3, 2, 1.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Kent. Happy birthday to you. put it up here. Let's show the. We could show the audience here.
It's awesome.
Thank you, Win.
Good,
This is awesome. Thank you.
It looks great. Happy birthday to you again.
That's fantastic, ladies and gentlemen.
Happy birthday.
Big ol' happy birthday!
There we go.
All right, and then Big Jim, Jim Thatcher, does the Tech and Trade podcast, and from time to time you'll hear his voice on the show doing a promo for Tech and Trade. But since he's here, and we've had some pretty big trade-related tech fallout from that ransomware that happened earlier this week.
Yeah, and actually that wasn't what I was going to cover. But yeah, I mean,
Okay, but we got other stuff to talk about.
Do it on the fly.
So real quick before we get into the Q&A, we're going to hear from Jim. Meanwhile, Hammond right here has got the mic. So if you've got questions, he's got the mic. Make sure to raise your hand and call him over and get your questions ready. Go ahead, Jim.
And now it's time for Tech and Trade with your host, James Thatcher. It's Friday, June 30th, 2017, and I'm James Thatcher, live from Nerdtacular. And today I want to discuss something that came up on yesterday's DTNS when we talked about Elon Musk turning around and having the Hyperloop tunnel be buried from LAX to Sherman Oaks. And one thing I would implore Mr. Musk to look at is to consider not only LAX to Sherman Oaks, but if we're in LA anyway, why don't we go ahead and look at going from Long Beach Harbor and LA Harbor and making a Hyperloop out to the Inland Empire. There could be a lot of cost savings with this. There's a lot of environmental concerns that are going on with trucks. And if you consider Long Beach and LA together are the largest West Coast Trans-Pacific container port in the world, or in the US at least, you are going to find that it would make a lot of sense to take at least the 40% of the traffic that stays there and goes to the Inland Empire anyway, to get it out there as fast as you can without having trucks. But that's just my 2 cents. For Tech and Trade, I'm James Thatcher.
Yay! That was perfect. That was perfect. Good job, man. All right, so we've got questions coming in from our analysts in the analyst Slack. And so if you're on the stream or you're an analyst in the audience, you could go into Slack. I guess you could also ask it in person. And go into that hashtag questions section if you'd like to ask us some questions. We'll get those going here. I'm also going to be levelating the show while we do this. So you'll be in the audience. You'll be able to watch that happen as well and publish the show. We don't have any questions yet lined up in there. We have one here. Let's go ahead and start with that one then.
Hi, my name is Alan. Cornfields of Southern Illinois. And I've noticed in my life, used to be the difference in tech between the cities and the rural areas was minimal at best. I live in a very rural area. A lot of people don't have internet. A bunch don't have cell phones. They still have landlines. And it just seems to get worse every year. Stephen, you mentioned that about your parents. What do you guys see happening with that? I mean, we saw the drone thing, but that's not the only thing that's going on.
Yeah, my first reaction to that, because my sister lives out. By the way, which cornfields of Southern Illinois are you near? Robinson. Okay. Yeah, not far at all. My sister's outside Greenville, and she deals with this. Things slowly come out to her, so she's got the internet that I had 5 years ago, right? And they'll eventually come. But this is one of those cases where I think there needs to be some kind of equivalent to the rural electrification project. Because it's not that you don't keep, people out in rural areas can go get a phone. Amazon can deliver to them. That's not the problem. It's the connectivity that's the big problem that underlies everything else.
Well, and before, I think you have a great point of view on this, but I think the fact that these companies, that granted, we can understand that they're there to sell you ads, and that's why they're getting you into their ecosystem with the internet, is encouraging in that there is hardware, there is money being spent other than ISPs that have made, obviously, this quantitative decision that it's not worth it to extend their service this far into those areas. So the more people that are looking to get internet in the hands of everybody, and that includes everybody from Google, Facebook, the current ISPs, all of the telcos, and Elon Musk with SpaceX. I think we are probably going to see more connectivity over the next 10 years in those areas, specifically based on new hardware breakthroughs or just tech breakthroughs.
And I wouldn't look at just a big company to take care of this. The way that fiber came to Western Kansas was that there were a bunch of local telephone exchanges that basically said, and this sounds crazy, but back in the early 90s, they're like, we're going to just form our own, literally called rural telephone company. And they decided to invest in infrastructure. And over the course of the 90s, by the time you hit 2001, there were people in farming communities that had fiber to their door before the bigger cities had fiber to the door. So that's something to look forward to.
Eat it, Lawrence.
Before Lawrence.
I know. Eat
right?
it.
Yeah. And so it's really amazing when you look and see what they've done and how they were able to come together and say, we're investing in infrastructure because we know that is the future of what Western Kansas needs. It was a huge step. And when you look at farmers and kids would come into town to go to college, and they're talking about how slow the internet was in town. And they're like, well, we've got fiber. We've got everything coming to us in fiber. So it's amazing. So look to the small rural telephone companies to hopefully come together to bring that fiber and the connectivity that the rural communities in this country need.
If only they were allowed to.
Yeah,
because,
that is the big problem.
I mean, looking at this from a filthy European point of view, there are a lot of things that are problematic in this current situation that the U.S. is in. I think one is the lack of competition. We often talk about it on the show, but I think it's ridiculous that the U.S., the champion of the free market and the competition, is not having a healthy competitive market for internet infrastructure, which is essential to the economic growth, especially of those rural areas. And I mean, you have that example. I also, in Europe, we had this same issue in Finland, and I sometimes go to my wife's family country house, which is very remote, not as remote maybe as some of those places in the US, but very remote. And the way they got fiber, because they did, was community initiative. And those are being stopped by the big, and it's one of those, not to get political, that's not the goal here, but it's one of those issues where it shouldn't really be a political issue. It should be, yeah, we need it, and it's not happening. How do we make it happen? And it seems like common sense that people should kind of agree on at least one of those options. But yeah, I think the irony is that it's happening everywhere else, and for some reasons it's not happening here. So it's worth looking at why it's not happening here specifically, and not just wait for the Facebook planes and the Google balloons.
Well, on the flip side of that, with my parents, which are on the other end of the state, they're still on a party line. For anybody that knows what a party line is. Now, granted, over the years, they're the only people on that party line. But the company that's supposed to be rolling out internet in their area is only starting with roads north-south, and they're on an east-west road. And so every time they're asking about when are you going to start the east-west route, they're like, it's going to be years before we do that. So it's just crazy to see some of this stuff that's going on. So I do feel for you.
And just to bring everything home, I think that we've obviously had such a hard time trying to figure out, what is the best and the worst part of the way that we run things in America, which is decentralized decision making. And so when you have chronic bad decision making, like many local cities and counties do when it comes to laying new lines or making companies share those lines, then to me, I would, if I'm betting on a horse, I'm betting that Elon Musk is able to crack satellite internet on a level that we are able to see. Then everybody realizes, oh wow, no, we should actually be forcing these companies to compete with each other.
All right, we have a Slack message from Doctor, one of our folks who supports us.
Doctor. Hi, Doctor.
How do you think the internet should be legally monitored and controlled? Do you think government should be able to control what their citizens can access, or should they not be in control at all? I mean, I think he knows that the answer to both of those is no, but where on the scale do you think that should be?
We're figuring it out. For me personally, I think the big important thing to keep in mind in that difficult process that we're all going through is idealistic views are great, but at some point you need to be a little bit pragmatic about things, and that's true for basically everything. But
It's a really hard question to ask, and it's not like we don't have, regulations here in America, especially when it comes to, can't murder somebody.
Not anymore.
Unseemly, I know. So suburban. But I don't know. I mean, I'm always going to wind up erring more on the side of,
less control. Right?
Less control, just because I do believe that there's a lot to be gained from kind of the freewheeling nature of the internet. We've seen we've reaped the fruits of that so far, and I would like to continue. But you're right. I mean, as we move more and more of our lives on the internet, then we have to understand that this is not just this place. I mean, of course, we're all Western nerds. Like, this was our home, and now all of a sudden, all the stiffs are moving in, and really gumming up the works. But it just means that there will be more regulation. The more people are there, the more regulation we're going to face.
I think one of the issues we're facing is that most of us come from this idealistic view, which is fantastic, which I share, that the internet is free and, from regulation and open to everyone, and that creates things that we could never have seen any other way, right? And we have that heritage, and it allows for everything that we have today on the internet. And it's really hard for us to, and the fear has always been, well, it's party now, but at some point the government is going to get in and regulate everything, and that's what we don't want. I think no one wants this.
No.
On the other hand, some things are kind of screwed up, and that's my comment on that.
Gadget Virtuoso has a follow-up on that idea. How long before there's a UN body to oversee issues like this, and what came out of Canada this week as far as, well, and just the Canada issue particularly, where they said, well, you have to take this page down from all your sites. We don't care if it's outside Canada.
Yeah.
Like, when do we need an international body? Forget whether it's the UN or not.
Yeah.
When do we need governments of the world to get together and go, hey, there need to be some rules because this is a global internet and you can't stop it from being a global internet? When, Justin? Can you give us a date?
Where's the over-under? I'll put the over-under at 5.5 years. The fact that you said UN, and I know let's take it outside of it, but you're always going to have the same problems when you are working with an international organization, because if it's not as close to possible negotiation between powerful countries will always use something like that, a seat at the table to decide the rules of the road of the internet, as a bargaining chip for other stuff. And it's it's not to say that it's not worth it to try to establish guidelines and frameworks to do it, because I think that is smart. But ultimately, what I think we're going to face is the rest of the world does not necessarily share our beliefs that things should be kept up on the internet. There is some restrictions in other parts of the world that, for their country, they can make that decision, but if they're at the table and we are all moderating our views, it is going to be more restrictive than some of the other countries.
Right. You don't want China and North Korea to have veto power in these things, but I mean, whether it's the UN or something else, it's not certain that their decision, as you were mentioning, Tom, was, well, you can't take something away from the internet because one country says so. Maybe they're going to say, yes, you can. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
But
well, and
also
that was the debate around Internet and the domain name system, right? Just the administration of domain names caused people to freak out and say, no, we don't want governments involved in this.
Which I was very much in that camp. But it's also, there's another way of looking at it, which is if you have different layers of government or of decision making, it creates sort of a balance as well. So if Canada, that has local quote-unquote interests, says, yes, you should be able to do this, then you get a second chance of someone saying, no, you shouldn't. It's like, judgment, appeals court, Supreme Court, whatever. And in order for something like this to go through, it has to go through all of those layers and be agreed upon at all of those layers. And one of those layers, if it's large enough, might have a different interest. So you have different kind of, quote-unquote, points points of failure, and if one of them says, no, you can't do that, then it doesn't happen, which often is the case in the EU. Sometimes the EU has a much clearer view on those complicated issues, and they're not as much bound by the local politics of these issues. And so often the EU is going to say, no, you can't, that's not right. And so the local countries that are mired in, terrorism issues and all of those might take decisions that are a little bit rash and are shut down by.
I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
Right, exactly.
What's the worst with EU and their member countries? I think the only other thing that I would say about that is maybe not a UN, but maybe a NATO. Maybe something where there are countries that share a similar mindset and can set a framework that they can then invite other countries into. That might be something to think about.
All right.
Is my Pornhub going away?
It could be threatened in a conceivable scenario.
No, it's never.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't never been to the site.
Hammond,
Sure,
you got
me either. Jeez.
We got another question from the audience. Hammond, go ahead.
Hi, this is I'm Dave from Alberta. When it comes to hate speech, when I hear about passing laws against hate speech, it kind of scares me. I'm trying not to get too political, but if you got a really left-leaning government, they're going to label things hate speech that are just criticisms and disagreements. Like if you disagree with social justice warriors, and they could term that as hate speech. So it's just kind of a slippery slope when I hear about laws like that.
Yeah, and that's why we very clearly didn't want to discuss them in the show, because that is an entirely political topic. There's nothing technology about it, right? And that, to bring your question into what we do talk about on the show, that is why it's so concerning putting that kind of responsibility on the social networks, because, the same argument about, well, if you make this kind of speech against the law and one political party interprets it this way, and then a different political party gets in office and starts interpreting it another way, it could affect your ability to protest. It could affect your ability to express your opinion no matter what it is. Do you want the social networks to be in that position? Because essentially what this German law could do is outsource that and say, hey, you know what? It's up to you to make sure nothing criminal goes up. And so what we were debating was that space of like, okay, do they have enough time to accurately assess it, whatever kind of criminal it is in whatever country, and will they err on the side of getting rid of things that they shouldn't, and therefore cause that effect that you're talking about, where the kinds of speech that you think are all right get removed because, well, we'd rather be safe than sorry.
And I just want to add, the kind of things that we consider hate speech in Europe is kind of clearly defined, and there's not a lot of slippage in that definition. It's kind of like if you say, Jews should die, that's a piece of hate speech. If you say social justice warriors should die, that's not cool. If you say, well, I disagree with what they're saying, that's okay. And I don't think that reasonably anyone would label criticism as hate speech, or at least it hasn't.
Again, now we're getting into a policy discussion that has nothing to do with technology.
It turns into once you have the axe, it is up to who is wielding it to decide exactly what to hit.
And what you're saying is the axe seems to be wielded fairly responsibly.
Exactly.
And what other people say
years,
is yes, but for how long? So that's where that goes.
And this is classic. I salute you, sir, for something that I share, which is classic, good old-fashioned American paranoia. Which I'm with you, because I always have that same tingle down the back of my spine whenever we talk about this stuff. So,
Big Jim, do you want to ask your question, or do you want me to read it out of the Slack? Okay, we'll do Hammond's next person, then we'll do Big Jim.
So I'm going to return it back to a little bit towards the show. Are you looking to branch out and have more shows or any major format changes coming up soon with DTNS?
No. On the more shows thing, like Justin always laughs at me because I'm like, I got an idea for a show. He's like, I bet you do. No, I can't promise that I won't be able to stop myself, but I probably should because I am at capacity, I'm beyond capacity of shows right now. But I've always got ideas. What I've been doing now is Scott Johnson and I have been cooking up an idea of what would have been a new show in the past, but we're going to try to fold it into Current Geek and create a show out of that. So with Daily Tech News Show, to answer the second part of your question, I definitely have ideas for not changing the format. We had a great conversation in Slack about what's important to people about the show and why they like it, but sort of molding the format and even expanding it a little. So one thing I can clearly say I want to do more of is a standalone interview episodes. I've had a couple of those in the feed in the last couple of months, and Roger and I have talked a lot about identifying people that we wouldn't normally have on the show necessarily because they can't hang with here's 6 stories that just happened. I mean, these guys didn't spend all morning preparing for our topics, but they're so good that I can throw like that Germany story, which is incredibly complex. Patrick can look at it, Justin can look at it, Stephen can look at it, and just be like, okay, we got smart things to say about this. That's not a skill everybody has.
We've got things to say about it.
That's not a skill everybody has, but those people who don't have that skill have an expertise that we'd like to take advantage of. So I'd like to do more of those kinds of episodes. And I've got other ideas for things to experiment and try with. What's that? Oh, the strike, the FSL strike. We have to talk about that.
I'll tell you what, it's a real shame.
Yeah.
They weren't able to come to a deal, and
collective bargaining was.
We hope they get back on the field soon. We can only hope.
It would be a shame to lose a championship because of collective bargaining.
It would be. It would be. It would be a real shame.
Big Jim, you've got the mic. Good. All right.
All right. Not that everybody has to be today. Okay, so here's was my question on the slide. What would you say is the biggest improvement that would need to be made with regard to viruses like impeachments like WannaCry? How does Microsoft and other OS providers force the push of these security patches to corporations that are very resistant to upgrades? The impact on this is more important than just the one company, but it trickles out to everybody. And I speak specifically about Maris because I'm sure that.
Yeah.
You got me going?
So we have smart things to say about stuff. Remember that.
Exactly. All
Well,
right.
okay. I got an answer for you. There was an article today that I almost put in the lineup, and you can find it at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. It's one of the top voted ones. That Microsoft is in the preview putting in place some file access, some permissions by folder, so that you can say, nobody but these 3 programs get to do anything to this folder. And if some other rogue program comes in and wants to lock stuff up, we're going to stop it. So that's something Microsoft is developing that would give extra protection. But the other thing is, patch your stuff, right? And so that begs the question, or brings up the question, how do you get companies to prioritize that? And maybe the answer is you have WannaCry and not Petya happen. Sadly.
I think something that changed over the past few weeks is that, and longer than the past few weeks, but definitely with WannaCry, is that idea that you don't want Microsoft to be doing stuff to your OS because it might break what you're using it for. Mm-hmm. And certainly that's obviously still true and still the case. But I think more people understand that as we push more of our business life and actual life in those systems, then maybe it's really important to make sure they're kept safe, and that also implies automatic patching in many cases.
And I think there's been an awakening in
I felt it.
And around the world in terms of understanding what personal and business security means. Things have been affected on a scale that we haven't seen, and a lot of it is ultimately stuff that probably is not intensely hard to fix. And I think that on a personal level, the fact that we saw a presidential election for however you define it being affected was indeed affected by a spear phishing attack. That's something where that's technical hygiene now blown up writ large for the entire country and the world to see as an example. And business-wise, I think for a new generation of IT professionals, this is the kind of stuff that they are going to market themselves on and are going to make themselves strong candidates in the workplace.
Certainly comes down to a liability issue at some point, and auto patching would resolve.
Yeah. Doctor has another question. Is the future? Are you going to do a cooking show, Tom? That's exactly the kind of trouble I get myself into.
Yeah.
Is I'm doing cooking and I'm like, man, I can do a show out of this.
You should talk to Ashley.
I know.
She can help you out.
That would be perfect. How could I turn the one time that I have to listen to podcasts into another show that keeps me from listening to other podcasts? All right, yes, I have.
It's a disease, folks.
Hiya. I feel like I'm just living life waiting for self-driving cars to really be a thing. This is Joe. 12 hours. So, I've kind of digested the idea of everybody having electric vehicles, but the self-driving thing is just like, no. That can't, I don't see how that can be as a big, like, just widespread. But then I think about how weird the internet is. So I'm kind of curious to get your guys' take on how long do you think it would take for self-driving cars to be pretty normal? And
Good
and
phrase.
why?
Yeah. That's a great way to phrase the question. How long before they're normal? Because technically there are self-driving cars on the street being tested, right? But not even just how long before the driver doesn't have to be in there, but how long before they're normal?
That's a good question. I mean, electric cars have been around for forever, right? But they've only really become more used in the last 15 years. So.
And ultimately, that was the tech problem.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the
40 years. I'm going to say 40.
That's
40 for normal.
20 to 30.
I'll go more aggressive. I'll say closer to 15, 20. And I think part of it is that we are already kind of seeing it, and it's going to come to big cities. Or I mean, trucking. Trucking's gonna be the first one.
There's normal for transportation. There's normal when I'm in a downtown of a major metropolitan area, and then there's normal for most places.
Yeah,
those are different timelines.
I guess I would turn the question back to you and ask: will you be comfortable?
Yeah.
How many years before?
What do they have to do to please you? These sweet driverless darlings.
I mean, I'll take one now, but I think, see, one thing I'm worried about is besides safety, which that's the main one, but I'm like, what is the price point for using these things?
Bingo.
You know, is it going to be just a little bit cheaper than?
When will it be normal? When it's cheaper and more efficient than what we're doing right now. Because as soon as that happens, man, things change real fast when it's cheaper and more efficient.
As scared as I'm going to be the minute I get in one for the first time, I know intellectually, I believe that it is safer than these things disconnected from a car driving them around. And I think that will likely be the case. Will it be as cheap? Everybody keeps saying, oh, it's going to be so cheap because you don't have to have as many cars. It's like, you know what? It doesn't matter how much it costs to run. It's going to matter on demand and where you think you can make the money. And is it going to be a luxury service? Maybe to start out, it's going to have to be, and it might take a while for that price to come down.
Yeah, I think everything is coming together. It's kind of like in AI. It's still kind of wonky, but everyone's working on it, and things are advancing really fast. There's definitely a price thing, there's a tech thing, there's an infrastructure thing, so all of it needs to be at a certain level for it to be a viable option. But I would go back to that famous saying in the tech industry that tech people tend to overestimate what can be accomplished in 2 years and underestimate what can be accomplished in 10. So I wouldn't go that aggressive, but maybe double that. So we might be overestimating what's going to be happening in 4 years, but probably 20 years we'll be surprised.
That's a good reason to make my 40-20, because my 40 is based on a lot of people who know this space saying it's going to be 40 years before we really got this perfected. And that principle of they always overestimate it does make me think, well, maybe it will be 20 after.
Yeah. Well, again, go back and look at what was the DARPA challenge where they were doing the self-driving cars. It's been going on since the early 80s. And we're still just getting to the point now where it's like, okay, let's test it in public. So
what happened was deep learning,
Yeah.
and that, it was just, 5 years ago that it really took a leap forward. And that's what we're seeing, how we're seeing all of the, incredible capabilities of computers now. And so really, it started really working 5 years ago, and already we're pretty far ahead.
Well, and even the 2-year electric car example, electric cars have taken off because batteries have gotten better. And batteries got better because we started using batteries in more things, and we needed them to be more robust and smaller and more compact and hold charges longer. So now that batteries are better, Electric cars are far more prevalent than they used to be.
Yeah. Tech Dad, one of our analysts, not a question, just says efficiency will be the thing that'll get people to want to get into self-driving cars. He's like 3+ hours of driving in Seattle for what used to take an hour. If you can cut that down with self-driving cars, that'll be a big thing.
So does that mean we're going to be working and living farther away from where we work as well? Like you can work in your car.
If suddenly it does, like
it's not really a commute.
If the 30-minute commute from my house to Eileen's new office became what it should be, which is like 10 to 15 minutes, then yeah, suddenly you can.
If you can crack LA traffic, there is no limit to the amount of money you can make.
And T-Glass 1976 saying, will the driverless car market be the new subscription service? Pay a monthly fee for your driverless car provider. I think that's a possibility.
And pick up your nature box.
All right, let's go to an in-audience question.
Hi, I got two things. One, it's about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. You brought up the whole cooking show. You mentioned the Instant Pot on your show.
The Instant Pot?
Yeah, Instant Pot. The pressure cooker, electric pressure cooker.
Oh, right, the connected pressure cooker.
Yeah.
Right, I think Belkin was involved in that, right?
Well,
yeah.
Anyways,
where'd that go?
That, and I bought one.
Okay.
And I love it.
Oh,
So
cool.
thank you. My girlfriend bought one, and she cooks me desserts and meals, and they're incredible. So, yeah, this is kind of an odd thing, and I pick up things here and there.
So the cooking show would be just press the button.
Yeah, that's about it. We'll
There you go.
back to
the ingredients.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. James Belkin. Here we go.
But my second one was, you talked about the party line. I grew up in a party line. I grew up with satellite TV, a big 10-foot fiberglass dish, because the cable company wouldn't run the cable another 600 meters up the road to my parents' house. And that's what my parents paid for it, which was an outrageous amount. But nowadays, with the rural areas getting such bad internet, there are a lot of wireless technologies, not necessarily 5G cell service, but there's been a lot over the last year or so. How do you guys feel that's going to come along? Would that be better than, say, flying drones? Is there enough investment in it?
I think it's hand in hand, because that kind of stuff will help where you can put the towers, right? And my sister, one of the services she tried out in rural Illinois was a microwave service that beamed in wireless internet to a rooftop antenna. That company just ended up going bust because they couldn't keep up with the speeds that ended up being available to her through DSL, which came to her area and stuff like that. But I think 5G wireless, that's going to help fill the gaps, or vice versa. 5G can become a service that a lot of people can take advantage of in areas that are built up, and even not that built up. Towns of 5,000 or less can get along with good 5G wireless service once it gets rolled out to them. And I used to be very skeptical of this as replacing wired Ethernet, but I think for a lot of people, it will. And then for those places where it doesn't really make sense for us to put any kind of 5G service out there because we won't get as many customers, and our customers that do have it don't drive there, that's where you have the Ocula flight. That's where you have the balloons and things like that. That's my guess anyway.
I have no thoughts. I mean, it's amazing that my parents still can't get decent internet, and they're literally a 30-minute drive from Lawrence, Kansas, or 40 minutes from Topeka, Kansas. So I don't know what the answer is for them.
In those cases, it's not a technology problem.
Yeah, it really is, and it's a government issue.
A couple pieces of housekeeping here. Usually on these analyst hangouts that we do, the Q&A with the Slack, I keep people up to date on how DTNS is doing. So real quickly, I want to do that. DTNS is doing great. My latest measure has been, can we get one patron more than the previous month? And so far this month, we've been held to that. So we've got minutes left in the last day of the month, so hopefully not enough people quit by the end of the day that it stays that way. But DTNS is on really solid footing. We'd like it to start growing so that we can do more than just what we have and hire some more people to do some interesting things and maybe have me be able to take more days off and stuff like that. But because of the continued support of so many patrons, many of who've been with us right from the beginning, that's on solid footing. I kind of answered the rest of my state of things with your question earlier. So Otherwise, it's just that we're going to keep trying to do what we do better, tighter, make sure that we're delivering the same amount of information in an amount of time that you can keep up with, which is one of the reasons we gave Daily Tech Headlines as an option for people who maybe they love listening to DTNS, but they miss a day or two and they just want to catch up. There's all kinds of ways that you can cobble together what we're offering there. I want to throw it out to Roger and even Len, because I see that Len's still hanging out with us. If you guys have got anything to add, I know it's kind of hard to break in when we're talking live. Is there anything that you wanted to chime in with?
Me?
Yeah, you or Roger, either one.
No, I was just listening.
Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you.
I was just listening.
Okay, yeah, no, that's cool. Roger, anything from your end?
He wasn't listening.
This happens all the time because we didn't pick titles. I just named it live from Nerdtacular. We didn't find out that when he muted himself, he couldn't unmute himself. So what's happening right now happens almost every show. Roger, we can't hear Roger. He quits Chrome, restarts it, rejoins, and then we can hear Roger.
All right, now can you hear me? Honestly, yeah, I don't really have much to add. I mean, really, the only thing that I might have had a topic on was kind of the Germany Facebook fine for hate speech, because someone already mentioned, and you guys addressed it pretty well, because I had this conversation with Tom before on a completely different topic, but it was political, is that for any kind of law or kind of onus that you put on civil liberties, you kind of want to turn it around and kind of think of it as, well, what if there's a party or a group in power that I don't like? How can they then use that to limit my ability for free expression or whatever? And everything's a balance, right? And it's not an absolute balance. It's a relative balance based on the community, the people that governs. And so, different places will have different solutions. Some work, some don't work, and some sort of work. But yeah. There's a bigger discussion to be had. I mean, it could be very well. It could be a very good test case to see if it's something like this could be broader reaching. But at the same time, when certain countries crack down on Twitter or Facebook feeds, we consider that to be overly authoritarian. Or perhaps dangerous because information isn't flowing. So that isn't to say that this is the case, but rather that things that look similar might not always be the same.
Any thoughts on the state of the show or anything, or did we cover that?
The state of the show, yeah, I like it. It's a good show.
Thanks. Roger thinks he produces a pretty good show. Do you guys agree?
Yeah.
High five. No, one thing, I think I mentioned this last time, but I would trying to integrate guests into the show who don't necessarily have the same flexibility as other guests we have on the show to show up at the same time. It's a discussion Tom and I've had about, like, do we record these separately? Do we roll it in? Do we roll it in? How do we do that? A raft of other things. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
I just want to say something publicly, if I will.
Yeah, please.
I'm just really happy to be a part of Daily Tech News Show for the past couple of years, and it's really amazing that you've been able to let me draw on Fridays. I can't think of another tech show that does that, and it's a really great opportunity to be able to do that. So I hope that we can continue. And I hope everybody likes it, and just let me come along for the ride. So
yeah, man,
that's all
I love it personally. I think it's great. You do great art, and it's always fun to see the different takes on stuff.
Excellent, thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, like, Len's artwork is so distinctive, and I think the show wouldn't be the same without it. So, Len, you are a credit, my friend, to the Daily Tech News Show.
Give it up for Len.
But by the way, I wasn't fishing for compliments at all.
No, I know you weren't fishing. You don't fish. I get it.
No.
All right, what's our next question?
Hi there. My question deals with politicians and the regulations they make on technology. I remember one of my strongest early internet memories is hearing a politician describe the internet as a series of tubes. And we've come a long way since then. But I noticed that many of our politicians are older, they don't grow up and evolve with this technology. As a teacher who's not much older than the students I teach in high school, I have trouble keeping up with it, and that makes me feel old on a daily basis. How do we address this issue of generally older, maybe slightly out of touch politicians regulating the technology? How do we educate them further?
I think it's tempting for us to think, oh, it's old people who don't get technology, and I see that many of you in this room are old people who absolutely get technology. So it's not determinative that just because of your age you don't get technology. I think we forget that our elected representatives aren't experts in a lot of stuff. There's all kinds of issues going well. Maybe we don't forget.
No, you're right.
Yeah, but we forget, like, you know, if you want to bring it to a little less of a shrill example in your own head, bring it down to your local city council, right? They're not experts in water management. They're not experts in asphalt. They're not experts in all kinds of things, even in policing, that you need to run a city. So they rely on experts to inform them and help them gain an understanding. And the same goes for your national governments as well, which is you need to make sure that you're electing people who are willing to listen to reliable sources and take advice to understand the problems, not just in technology, but all arenas, I think.
I mean, that's certainly the biggest part of the problem, I think. But it's also true that technology came really fast and changed a lot of things.
Absolutely. No, that's a fair point, yeah.
From like it destroyed industries and building ones up from nothing. So it's also expected, I think, that there's going to be a little bit of time needed for those groups of people, for lack of a better word, adapt to the realities of the new world, of the new industries. So those politicians that maybe aren't experts in many things need to also be surrounded by not just the people who have been there forever, who know about, you know, draining water and policing and all of that, but also include people who know about the real serious issues of the technology world. And maybe that's taken a little bit more time than we would have liked because we know the technology world, but it's very likely that there are people working in, I don't know, gene therapy or like Elon Musk is frustrated that things don't move as quickly. Like, I mean, other fields that also feel the same way.
And
technology
honestly,
has a big impact.
If you're into technology, and TechDad mentioned this in our Slack, and you have the time and resources, volunteer to help your local government understand technology. They may or may not be able to listen, but TechDad says he does that in his local community, so you may be surprised.
Yeah, affect the universe around you. It will always make you happier if you put some effort into what's going on. And I would only add a caveat to your statement that I don't know if the young elements of our representative democracy are all that smart about technology either. So, you know, I wouldn't just put it on the Orrin Hatches of the world.
Fair enough. Why you gotta pick on Orrin Hatch?
I mean, sometimes you get a dipsy doodle.
I think the demonstration part is probably the most important. Right about the same time as a series of tubes. It was Christmas time. A daughter gave her dad an iPad or an iPod, and he was playing around with it, came back, and they were talking about net neutrality, and he was like, the senator was like, does this mean that I could lose the access that I have on this iPad? Then I'm against this. Likewise, at your, and I don't know, did you say you're teaching high school or grade school, but as even someone like me, when you're looking at technologies that the schools are using to help keep their parents informed, you know, the teacher sends home a note that says, hey, we want you to get on board this XYZ program. And my wife and I are like, we know nothing about this. This sounds dumb. It sounds stupid. But then as soon as we see what it's doing and helping us to communicate with the teacher and helping us to see how the school is running, then suddenly it makes a lot of sense. And this piece of technology is wonderful, and we couldn't live without it. So affect locally.
Gadget Virtuoso in our Slack also asked if the milestones on Patreon are still valid for Daily Tech News Show. The one that is there is still valid, but we do. That's another thing that Roger and I have been kind of talking about, and we need to sit down and talk more with the rest of the co-hosts too about maybe coming up with some achievable future milestones as well.
Yeah, you know, I think that there's a lot that DTNS offers, and there's, I think, plenty of people that are here that support the show that would like to engage more with it and get more out of their Patreon, and some might even be willing to kick up their Patreon for that purpose. So I think that there's a million different ways that you can go, and anything else is just us talking about conversations that we've had.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't be talking.
Can I give you a free plug, Tom?
What's that?
Can I give you a free plug? If you're not a patron of the Daily Tech News Show, you really should, because there's a bunch of bonus content both before and after the show that you only get from that feed, which I find so insightful and invaluable. That's the reason why I support it.
Yeah, there's a weekly column you get as a patron at a certain level. Yeah.
And Tom and I do our pre-show
on Thursdays.
Thursdays when we're not traveling for Nerdtacular. And those are often as long, if not longer, than the show, as us talking about the show. And I think it's really fun, and I always really, really enjoy doing it because it's me and Tom kind of playing news.
It's our pitch meeting.
Yeah, newsroom bullpen.
Yeah, totally.
Discussing the shit, discussing the stories.
T-Glass1976 asks, who's your favorite patron? Every second, it's a new one. Or maybe that should be a milestone.
Just you, who's ever listening.
Become my favorite patron. Make us hit this milestone.
Exactly.
All right, do we have any other questions? Yes, we're starting to run low on time, but I think we could fit in a few more.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So my question is this, when do you think AI will make flawed decisions like humans do, and how do you think we will react to that? So for example, it would be like a car deciding to veer off and hit someone versus not, or making choices for us that we have personal AIs, and they make kind of a flawed decision almost purposely. And then how do we deal with that, and how do we deal with an AI when it makes a choice that's almost human-esque in their decision?
Wait, are you talking about malevolent AIs?
Well, I'm assuming before they realize they can just take us all over.
Yeah,
is there a point where
baby steps to evil is what you're saying.
But at a point in time where they are adapting to us, realizing they're dealing with humans, they have to make choices that aren't necessarily purely logical.
There was a story that I read and was also on We Have Concerns, another fine podcast if you haven't subscribed to it, about introducing intentional, essentially incompetence into AI for a particular kind of problem solving helped speed up the problem solving. When you made the AI just a little dumber, it actually made things work better. And I won't, you go read the article or listen to the episode, We Have Concerns, although Jeff Cannata gets it all wrong.
Big shots.
I love Jeff. I do, and I want to explain why I think that too. Soon I will. But anyway, you should get that episode or read that article because it's really interesting why that effect happens. And that could be the kind of effect we're like, oh, well, we need to build in a certain amount of error to make things more efficient, in which case it could lead to unintended side effects like you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, AIs make mistakes all the time. Yeah. Sometimes they are, hilarious little shapes, and sometimes, they are fatal. So I think we are in for more of that, like as all technology continues to evolve.
I think it's almost like the question is, when will they start making wrong decisions? I think we can almost be asking, when will they be making the right decisions? Because now they're kind of cute little toys. We're not there yet. And at some point, we're going to rely on them for some stuff, and they're going to be making... So I think we'll know. It's not like one day it's going to be, AI works, and everything's fine, and oh my God, they made a mistake. There is going to be, slowly...
That's not a cat that it identified. A couple of quick things from the Slack, and then I think we'll take one more question, and then we're going to have to wrap things up. BioCow, did you want to say it on the mic? Yeah? All right. We'll come right back to you. Hammond, if you could shuttle the mic over to BioCow over there. And then T-Glass1976 says, can we expect more weekly clickbait articles? What he means is my column in the Patreon this week was titled, Why the iPhone Isn't That Important. My first sentence was, I know this sounds like clickbait, let me explain. And you'll have to be a patron to read more about that. But no, I don't want to be, that was clickbait. I don't want future articles to intentionally be clickbait, but I had this in mind for a particular reason.
I think it's also safe to say that you have a certain love of the evocative headlines.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was my first job at CNET, was writing headlines. So.
Yeah.
5 hot Asian phones got me in trouble. All right, so BioCow.
Yeah, regarding the question about politicians kind of not being technologically savvy, I lived in San Jose until recently. My local rep, House of Rep, was Zoe Lofgren, and she pushed hard for Aaron's Law and for net neutrality, and I contacted her office multiple times thanking her for that and telling her to keep up the good work. So just talk to your politicians, local senators, state senators, government senators, and just encourage them on those topics that you think are important. Because they are listening, and they are out there working for it.
There's also the belief from people inside the Beltway that physical mail is still something that is counted quite a bit in Congress.
Yeah, like letters and stuff.
Yeah,
like
so
written
letters,
on paper.
postcards, like that is something that people take very, very to heart.
Okay.
So it's like vinyl. Retro tech is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways,
So
the big boy never left.
keep those telegrams coming. All right, we got one last question.
Yeah, last question, and it's back on the topic again, kind of the hate speech. I don't know how many of you here are caught up on Black Mirror or not. Spoiler alert. Close your ears if you're not. How much squeezing is Facebook and other companies going to take financially before they start considering murderous fees to solve their hate speech problems?
So you mean charge for removal, or?
I mean, how long are they going to, I guess, put up with people using their platform to push their agenda, I guess you could say, before considering alternative methods like murderous bees who just go out and murder people who have hate speech?
I thought you were saying murderous fees.
Like bees, like in a hive.
Murderous bees makes your question make so much more sense to me. I'm like, so what? They just gonna charge the extremists? Like that's not gonna work. They just won't pay. Murderous bees. The potential for murderous bees from Facebook, Twitter, probably from Twitter. Don't try anything.
Before self-driving cars. That's what I'm
I mean, that's what their platform is. Not murderous bees, but expressing your opinion. So that's the whole issue. They can't separate their core business from the issues that the core business causes. So they're going to tolerate it until they die from it. I mean, tolerate
die
it.
from murderous bees.
From murderous. They're gonna try to weed out the toxic uses of their platform, but it's not like they can say, all right, you guys are mean, we're going to shut things down, goodbye, Facebook is done. So, no, they can't.
Yeah, they wouldn't have to shut down, they just send the murderous bees.
Yeah, that's true, that's true.
Yeah.
So the problem then becomes identifying the people that you're going to send murderous bees to. They're just, moving the problem to another level.
What's the liability for accidental bee death, wrongful bee death, all of that, the whole system. Yeah, because the AI screwed up. Exactly.
It all makes sense.
Well, big thanks to Len Peralta for joining us and drawing today. Go check out his art at lenperaltastore.com. Thank you, Len.
Hey, welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Roger Chang, from producing from our home office in Burbank, California. I know you're not in Burbank. It just sounded better than Glendale. Thank you, Stephen Schleicher, for joining us. Woo! Justin Robert Young, Action News.
ActionNewsGame.com.
Patrick Beja. Patrick.com. Yeah. I'm Tom Merritt. Thanks again to all of our patrons, especially our analysts and everybody who supports the show at patreon.com/DTNS. Big thanks to every single one of you for coming out, hanging out with us right now. You guys are the best. Woo!